Große Willkommen and in another Folge's video. Welcome to another exciting video. In this case, episode 10 of my Wargaming Rules Review series of videos. In this video, I'll provide an overview of Große Schlachten, which is based on the s2e10 Napoleon at War board game, but has been revamped for figure gaming purposes. My previous video described the original board game which I used to create this set of rules from. While Große Schlachten is based on the s2e10 Napoleon at War, it has been totally rewritten with changes designed to give it a figure gaming feel. Many of my earlier ideas have been dramatically altered after a significant amount of playtesting, so I hope the rules are something which gamers will find useful. If you just wish to use the board game with no changes, players can do that themselves, and any effort on my part will be of minimal value. Simply download the rules and go for it. If, on the other hand, you want to try a set of rules which have been optimized for figure gaming, but which is based on this board game, then you are in the correct video. My current final version is Große Schlachten version 3, which is a totally rewritten set of rules based on s2e10 Napoleon War series of board games, and which have been optimized for figure gaming. While this version can still be used to refight the historical battles or scenarios of the board games, the focus has moved to an ad hoc card-based scenario system. The force mixes are all based on historical force mixes used in actual battles, but the card-based system create a unique scenario for players to refight each time they go through the process. As a result, we've entered the world of points-based gaming, similar to the Ancients community, but which still offers a highly variable ad hoc game which has all the hallmarks and benefits of an actual historical battle. The most important aspect of any set of rules is its scale, as this affects a host of other factors, such as what type of game you would expect, what amount of movement, and to a lesser extent the force mixes you require. Now let's look at the scale. For the figure gaming version, the standard playing area I use is normally 3 by 4 feet in size, with the option of a 6 by 8 foot game using a different scale for players who like monster games. If you're using an element width of 4 centimeters, then each centimeter represents 100 meters, which represents a scale of 1 in 10,000. If using 3 centimeter element widths, each centimeter represents 133 meters, which represents a scale of 1 in 13,333. If using 5 centimeter wide movement trays, into which 4 centimeter elements can be placed, each centimeter represents 80 meters, which represents a scale of 1 in 8,000. An element width is always 400 meters. Each game turn represents 60 minutes. My earlier version 1 used an upscale and downscale option, but as these rules are focused on ad hoc scenarios, I only have a single scale in my version 3 of these rules. Each element represents 2,000 infantry, 1,600 cavalry, 1,000 skirmishers, or 24 artillery pieces. This represents an infantry figure scale of 1 in 500, cavalry scale of 1 in 400, and artillery scale of 1 in 24. The sequence of play is a classically simple I go, you go sequential system, with each player conducting a movement phase followed by a combat phase. The first phase is the reinforcement phase, where both players deploy reinforcements on the playing area edge. The phasing player can now move all units. Units which are out of command control may have a movement impact. The phasing player can now conduct combat. All units in a combat zone of control of an enemy unit must attack, and all enemy units in a combat zone of control must be attacked, as per the original board game rules. The second player is now the phasing player, and as a result repeats the 2 phases that the first player has already completed, starting with movement. This is then followed by the second player combat phase. The last phase is the game turn record phase, where the game turn marker is advanced. Reinforcements are taken off the game turn track and placed on the player edge. If using army morale rules, determine army morales and their effects. There are no commander rules in the original board game. Some of the games, such as ILR, have individual core demoralization rules, but apart from this, there are no commanders. No command control and no command quality rules, apart from the special rules for each battle in the original board game. The lack of command control caused significant issues in all my playtesting, and I wonder how the board game managed to deal with the problems that I discovered. Perhaps the scenarios are fairly rigidly controlled, so the problems don't really appear. As a result, a significant amount of command control rules were added. Each player has one CNC and a number of sub-commanders, equal to the number of cores fielded, normally from 4 to 6 per side. Units must be within command control of sub-commander or CNC, otherwise their movement is impacted and those units cannot move into an enemy movement zone of control, or in simple terms, they cannot engage the enemy. A standard commander has a command radius of 3 base widths. Note, all movement distances are in base widths. Commanders have a quality rating and the command radius is affected accordingly. The only exceptional situation is for light cavalry. Superior light cavalry, which are out of command control, are unaffected by command control. Ordinary light cavalry out of command control do not halve their movement allowance, but other effects still do apply. Inferior light cavalry suffer all the effects of being out of command control if they are out of command control. Commanders, both CNC and sub-commanders, which join a unit can influence its combat shift. However, there is a chance the commander will be killed. A CNC has a fixed number of orders or order points each game turn. These are expended to activate subordinate sub-commanders. Units which trace command control to sub-commanders which are not activated have their movement reduced but are otherwise unaffected. Leftover orders can be used to influence any attack by providing a shift bonus. The number of orders or order points required to activate a sub-commander depends on the quality of the sub-commander. If a sub-commander is superior or excellent, it's always activated, no order points are required. If it's inferior or despicable, it takes a lot of orders or order points in order to get those guys to do anything. Elements do have varying quality level. However, quality is reflected in an element's combat strength. A superior infantry element has a combat value of 6, while an ordinary element has a combat value of 4. Apart from quality, there are a number of special troop type rules as well. If a cavalry element is within the movement zone of control of an enemy artillery element and is attacking the enemy artillery, the cavalry element's attack combat strength is doubled. Also, if cavalry are attacking skirmishers in clear terrain, their combat or attack combat strength is also doubled. Cavalry defense strength is unaffected. A cavalry unit which retreats from combat may retreat twice or may retreat 2 base widths rather than the standard 1 base width. A cavalry unit which advances under combat may advance twice if the opposing enemy unit was eliminated or if the opposing enemy cavalry unit retreated twice in turn. A cavalry unit solely attacked by non-cavalry units can decide to retreat 2 base widths instead of being attacked. This is declared the moment the enemy attack is declared, and the enemy units allocated to the attack are considered to have attacked even if no actual combat is conducted. Cavalry in built-up areas, woods or rough terrain do not gain any combat benefit from being in that terrain unless the cavalry are dragoons. It's assumed the dragoons dismount and can gain the benefit of the terrain. Heavy cavalry, which move into an enemy movement zone of control and then conducts an attack against an enemy infantry unit, are doubled in attack. All movement is conducted in base widths. So if the base width is 4 cm, each base width distance is, guess what, 4 cm. All elements have a movement allowance called movement points, or MP, which provides you with an idea of how many base widths it may traverse on the playing area. Entering some types of terrain costs more than 1 MP per base width, and moving along roads allow you to expend half a MP per base width traversed. As soon as an enemy moves within the movement zone of control of an enemy element, its move immediately stops and the elements are now locked in combat. Only combat can allow elements to leave an enemy movement zone of control. A movement zone of control is half a base width from any point of a unit. In terms of basing, there are 2 types of elements allowed, the first being traditional UK-based elements. In this case, up to 3 infantry and 2 cavalry artillery elements can form a unit, which conduct movement and combat as a single unit. Players may use movement trays in this case. If using the US basing, a unit is a single element, but elements to the rear can support those in the front. US basing for 15mm is typically 2 cm wide by 3 cm deep for infantry and 3 cm square for cavalry and artillery. All square basing, such as 3 cm squared for 10mm or 6mm figures, fall into this group as well. All elements or units have a movement zone control which extends half a base width in all directions. Units which touch an enemy zone of control are locked in place and their movement immediately ends. Elements also have a combat zone of control which extends one base width in all directions. All enemy units in a combat zone of control must be attacked, and all friendly elements in an enemy zone of control or combat zone of control must attack. Combat uses a rather simple odds-based CRT. The possible results are AE, attacker eliminated, the attackers are all removed. AR, attacker retreats, the attackers must retreat one base width. Exchange basically means that the defenders are eliminated and the attackers must lose a number of units equal to the defenders. DR, the defender retreats one base width. DE, the defender is eliminated, remove all the defenders. If using the UK basing width or system with 2 to 3 element units, possibly in a movement tray, there are a further 2 possible results. A1, that is the attacker loses 1 element, or D1, the defender loses 1 element. Armies can become demoralised if they suffer too many losses. This is determined at the end of the game turn. Reinforcements may result in an army recovering from demoralisation. If casualties reach an even greater level, an army may panic. Once an army has panicked, there is no recovery. If you remember the earlier slides, all unit in an enemy zone of control or combat zone of control must attack, and they must attack all units or enemy units in their combat zone of control. How you attack or divide it up is up to the phasing player. In this example, using US basing system, elements, the white unit must attack both grey units. If the grey units were phasing, or part of the phasing player's turn, both units must attack the white unit. If, on the other hand, there is another white unit, as seen on the right, then the grey player, if that was the phasing player, could decide to have one of the elements attack one of the enemy or white elements each, or alternatively, if they had a piece of artillery off the playing area, they could soak off one of the white units and have both elements attack a single element. Basically, the phasing player may divide up the attack in any particular way they desire, as long as all enemy elements are attacked and all of their elements are involved in the attack. For the most part, all combat occurs between adjacent units. There is no difference between fire combat and close combat in these rules, and both occur together within the same combat phase. However, there is a special type of ranged fire combat called bombardments, which only artillery can perform. Artillery can attack from 2.5 base widths away, supporting the attacks of other units. This gives the attacker the ability to project firepower into a single spot to break through. In the most part, bombardment is used to dislodge an enemy defender in good terrain, in that it's rather effective. This is an example of a complex combat. In this case, we have 3 units in combat and 3 opposing units. In this case, the phasing player, that is the white units, matches up 1 unit against each opposing unit. Note, the phasing player could attack 2 units with 1 and attack the remaining unit with 2 of their units. Let's look at the more detail. The A unit, the dark unit, has 1, resulting in it advancing after combat 1 base width. B, the white unit has 1, it advances after combat 1 base width. C, the dark unit is 1, but the white unit has decided to take a loss instead of retreating. This has resulted in a very confusing situation in the following combat phase. As you can see, there is a risk for the white player. If the unit in the centre is unable to retreat after combat, it's in big trouble. It gets basically eliminated. When the units are butted up against each other in this level of density, the way combat occurs, or the order of combat, can be quite significant, because if you can surround an enemy unit and then attack it in the following phasing combat phase and force it to retreat, it is eliminated. As with the board games, there is a fixed number of game turns, which when it's reached, both sides calculate victory points and determine victory. Because we are simulating an entire battle at a scale of 1 hour per game turn, the number of game turns will be 12 in spring and autumn per day, and more in summer and less in winter. There are no markers or counters required on the playing area, which I personally feel is a major plus. The only record keeping is the game turn record chart, and probably as you spin dice, you probably leave the dice there so you know what the results are. For a traditional figure gamer, these rules are very simple. However, I've found this simplicity very useful in recruiting new players. I can teach a new player within 1 or 2 game turns how to actually play the game. More complex rules would result in a new player simply following the advice of the more experienced player for the entire game, which is probably good for learning but is not really much fun. Coupled with a card-based ad hoc scenario generating system, these rules have proved rather surprisingly successful. These are homegrown rules and they can be downloaded from the Shown.io group site. And so this concludes episode 10 of my video series on rules review, in this case providing an overview of Große Schlachten. Alle guten Dinge, kommen zu einem Ende.